You tell me in what way the Democrats expect him to, quote, lead at this point to turn around their electoral fortunes as we have, 11 months now until the midterm elections.
I don't think he can. And the reason I mentioned the states that you just read off was that those are states whose U.S. senators or Democratic governors have started to defy him. The last week was particularly bad for Joe Biden. Joe Manchin and John Tester, so that's West Virginia and Montana, got together to vote with all Republicans to reverse the federal vaccine mandate. That probably won't become law because Biden will veto it, but the gesture is interesting nevertheless. 5 Democrats without Joe Manchin. So you have Virginia, Colorado, 2 in Arizona, 1 in Montana, got together to end the nomination of Saul Omarova, who he wanted as controller of the currency. And you have Joe Manchin continuing to oppose key parts of Biden's agenda and trashing parts of that agenda in the press. And I think it's a little unfair of people to say, well, Biden needs to lead. Biden is the last thing that is going to change this equation because, as you said, he's unpopular. He can't go into those states over the heads of the representatives who are more popular and say these guys are doing the wrong thing. Firstly, it would be counterproductive. But secondly, that's actually what they must want. And if you're Joe Manchin, what you want right now is for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or anyone else, frankly, to come into your state and say you're the problem. Makes you look independent, makes you look probably stronger than you are. So there's really no chance for Joe Biden to turn this around. What he needs is a lot of good news. But I will say, I think he's making a big strategic mistake. And this is perhaps a mistake that Democrats and progressives make inevitably because of their worldview. You may remember this. 2 weeks ago, the DCCC put out one of the silliest tweets I think any of us had ever seen. And it showed gas prices going down about 1.5 cents over 2 weeks. And the caption said, "Thank you, Joe Biden." And I wrote at the time, that was a huge mistake because the correct argument that Biden should be making, and when I say correct, I mean true, not just politically efficacious, is that he's not in control of gas prices.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
High gas prices are by and large not Biden's fault. Now, he is in some ways making them worse, and he's doing not that much to make them better, but they're not his fault. But if you go on Twitter and your party starts taking ownership of negligible marginal drops in prices, what do you think people are going to conclude when they go up? As of course they did immediately. They're going to think, well, if the tiny decrease was Joe Biden's doing, then this 10-cent increase must be Joe Biden's doing as well. It was really silly, and it did the president no favors whatsoever.
And now the White House watching the press coverage, even the left-wing press, has to be somewhat honest about these inflationary numbers. I mean, the latest is highest levels in nearly 40 years, the strongest inflationary burst in a generation. And they say, okay, so it's basically a 6.8% pace on a year-over-year basis. That's the fastest rate of growth in inflation since June 1982. Energy prices up 33.3% since November of 2020. Gasoline up 58.1%. Food prices jumped 6.1%. And up they go. And so what does the White House do? They gather the reporters, their favorite reporters, together to say what we really need is better coverage because we swear the story is better than it looks right there. And that's what leads us to people like Don Lemon, who, in seeing gas prices go down a few cents, did the following on CNN. Listen to this.
Big economic relief for millions of Americans who have been dealing with soaring energy prices. Cost at the pump finally easing up, with the national average for a gallon of regular falling to $3.35, the lowest since October. Just look at that. Ah.
OMG, Charlie.
Yeah, the Biden's response, Biden team's response to this has just baffled me. I mean, the first thing they should be doing is completely reorienting his presidency to meet this challenge. It is not largely his fault that we are seeing these inflationary pressures, although I will say spending trillions of dollars, as the party did again in March, $2 trillion of unnecessary spending, has not improved things. But it's not mostly his fault. And yet he's not reoriented himself to fighting it. And I think that's what people want. What they don't want is for him to carry on pursuing a bill that the party would have tried to pass in 2018 or 2016 or 2014, as if nothing is happening. And so there's a real disconnect here between what we're seeing on the ground, which again is not really Biden's fault, and what he's talking about, to the point at which he and his party are saying some incredibly silly things like, well, if you're worried about inflation, then you really should get behind the Build Back Better bill. That's what will nix inflation. No, it won't. It won't. And it will probably make it worse, because flooding the economy with trillions more dollars, printing more money, is not how you get rid of inflation. In terms of the media, I think this is where Democrats suffer from their domination of the media, the academy, the entertainment industry, and so on. Most of the time, they benefit. They can run interference for the party through the press. They can use push polls. They can change perceptions. What they can't do here is convince people that what they're seeing with their own eyes isn't real. You might be able to alter the perception of a candidate using the newspapers. You might be able to bury inconvenient stories just by the process of picking and choosing what you print and what you air. But telling people that inflation is actually not bad, telling people that the economy is healthier than it's ever been, telling people that the labor market is fine, and as David Leonhardt pointed out in the New York Times, telling people that this is normal America, an America with messed up schools and empty airports and supply chain problems. It's just bizarre because people can see it. People know whether their wages are in line with their outgoings, and they know whether it's easy to find a job, and they know whether they can travel in the way that they used to, and they know how their children's schools are operating. And you can make as many calls to Don Lemon or Dana Milbank or Jennifer Rubin as you like, and implore them to tell people that actually on paper it's fine. But come on.